A busy week in the New Hampshire Senate as senators study the 3 R's: retirement, railroads, and RGGI. Coming up in the Cloakroom. The New Hampshire Senate this week reached compromises on repealing the regional greenhouse gas initiative and stripping the New Hampshire Rail Transit Authority of almost all of its power. Meanwhile, the House and Senate Conference Committee dealing with pension reform got off to a slow start on Senate Bill 3, a major package designed to shore up the New Hampshire retirement system. At the same time, the retirement system's board voted to lower its anticipated rate of return from 8.5% to 7.75% for the foreseeable future, at least on paper, making the anticipated shortfall in the retirement system a couple of $1 billion bigger. We speak with Senator Jeb Bradley, who authored Senate Bill 3. And as all conference committees go, it started off slow, not a lot of agreement on how you're going to bridge the gap. Where is the conference committee now in terms of what you've agreed to and what differences still remain?
Well, I think we've agreed on the date of implementation, which will be December 1st. So that will give people who are members of the retirement system, police officers, firefighters, educators, and employees an opportunity to see what the final legislative package looks like. So that's a huge accomplishment right out of the gate. There are differing degrees that the House and Senate position have, but I think we're all basically on the same page. But this is a very complicated bill, so we have to take our time, understand each other's positions before we get to yes.
What would you say is the major issue left to decide? Is it the vesting issue, whether it applies to vested employees?
I think that's one of the issues, and certainly something that we will discuss further.
As one of the legislative members of the New Hampshire Retirement System Board, you pushed yesterday to lower the anticipated rate of return. They've been counting on 8.5%. It's now going to be 7.75%. What does that change do, at least on paper, to the shortfall that we can expect in the retirement system?
Well, what's happened over the last 20 years is that the board has set an investment return of 8.5%, assumed return, return on the investments. Unfortunately, over the 20-year period of time, the actual return has been 7.8%. And so I think there's a need to recognize reality. Most experts expect slower growth in the future. It may improve in the longer horizon, but certainly over the next 5 to 7 years, the slower growth is what's going to happen. Now, what that means is if there's less income coming from investments, it has to be made up either in employer rates or employee rates, again, pointing to the need for Senate Bill 3.
Turning to RGGI, you offered an amendment that would change the program but still keep it on the books. The House voted for straight-out repeal, pulling New Hampshire out of it. What does the Bradley amendment do to RGGI in New Hampshire?
Well, let's be clear. I favor repeal of RGGI. I think that there are numerous problems within the program that we should withdraw from RGGI. But I'm also a practical person. We need 16 votes in the Senate to override the governor's expected veto. There are 15. So it's time to do the math. And we don't have the necessary votes to repeal the program. I wish we did, but we don't. So as somebody who is a believer in good government, not wasting money, not allowing politically motivated grants to go to favored businesses or favored individuals, and making sure that if we're going to take money from the public, whether it's a tax or a fee or a RGGI type of situation, it has to go to programs that work. And so since we can't repeal the program, since there are not the votes to do it, it's absolutely essential that we fix it, reform it, make it much more cost-effective for consumers, and send the money to programs that work. That's what the amendment does.
How would that work? How do you think it makes it more accountable?
Well, it caps the carbon ton price so that there can't be runaway price spikes. It rebates some of the money that is currently being collected right now to electric customers, and the remaining money that is been funding grants will go into programs that actually work, that have been around for about a dozen years, that are regulated by the PUC and run by the utilities. So they'll be in the private sector as opposed to politically motivated grants. I mean, I can't stress enough that for somebody that believes in good government, if we can't repeal it, we've got a responsibility to fix it. And that's what my amendment does.
Senator Bradley, thank you for joining us again on the Cloakroom.
Thank you.
The RGGI bill will now likely head to a House-Senate conference committee as the House has voted to repeal the program entirely. Another bill likely headed to compromise, the New Hampshire Rail Transit Authority. The House wants to get rid of it entirely. The Senate passing an amendment that would strip it of much of its power, but give it the right to study commuter rail from Nashua to Concord and to accept any federal grants in the future. Joined now by Senator Lambert from Nashua, we're talking about the New Hampshire Rail Transit Authority. The Senate voting to take away many of the functions of the Rail Transit Authority today and essentially make it a study committee to look at further federal funding, developing that capital corridor from Nashua up through Concord. You oppose that amendment and changing what the New Hampshire Rail Transit Authority does?
Yeah, I do, Grant. And the reason why I do is it doesn't go far enough. We've got to get rail into Nashua for a multitude of reasons, and I can go on and on, but here's the primary reason. I've got a railroad track going right through my district from north to south. The only problem is there's no people on it, and there's no reason for that. At gas at $4 a gallon, the buses jammed going down to Boston every hour and a half. There's no reason why we can't get rail, because we need rail. And when gas goes up to $5, $6, $7, $8 an hour, people are going to be looking for an alternative mode of transportation. Because right now, Route 3 is jammed at the rush hour, coming and going. And if you look in the cars, there's only one person in the car. And that's just an inefficient use of gas.
Wherever commuter rail is tried, it always operates with some sort of taxpayer subsidy. Even success stories such as the Downeaster still receive state funding. Do you see a Nashua commuter rail being able to operate without state support every year?
No, I don't. And I know under these tough budgetary times, it's difficult to say, look, it's time to subsidize that. But we've got a lot of subsidies already in place. The roads, the bus service, and it's all working. So while I'm a fan of small government, there is a time and place for government, and this is one of those times.
You've been notoriously quiet on the Senate floor since your election and taking office in January. Senator White gave you a little ribbing today for speaking up on the rail bill. What's it feel like to be essentially making your maiden speeches on the Senate floor?
Well, the only reason I haven't made any yet is because I tend to agree with what most people have said with respect to my position on the Senate floor. And as today, I mean, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, that I took it out from the committee, so I had my first say, and I'm passionate about RGGI for obvious reasons, and I'm passionate about rail. And they all boil down to jobs, and that's what I'm passionate most about.
Why do you think New Hampshire should stay in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative?
Because of jobs. And I know that sounds overly simplistic, but that's the number one issue I ran on. And like I say, the number one thing that hit me is, you got to remember, I'm from Nashua. I'm not from these other districts. So I have probably one of the smaller land masses of all the Senate districts, and it's all retail people. And those retail people are actually providing jobs to my constituents. And anything I can do to help them, and they've asked me to help. It's not like I went out as a cowboy and said, let's do this. They came to me, they begged me, please keep RGGI. The small businesses of the state took out a full-page ad. Let's keep RGGI. These are the people employing people, so I listen to them.
Are you concerned that the state is sending money to Stonyfield Farm, Dartmouth College, private organizations that shouldn't be receiving money from the state?
I'm concerned, and that's why I've always been a fan of the Bradley Amendment. I wish we could have dealt with the Bradley Amendment right off the bat. I think RGGI has its problems like so many other laws and bills, and that's one of the problems. But, you know, you can criticize Stonyfield for all you want, and this, that, and everything. They provide jobs, too. They're a great employer. They're a great asset to the state. Enough said.
Senator, thanks for joining us in the Cloakroom.
Thank you very much, Grant.
Revenues are at the heart of the current budget battle in New Hampshire as Governor John Lynch anticipates a relatively rapid recovery from the recession, while House budget writers expect essentially flat revenues for the next 2 years. In this week's New Hampshire Watchdog poll, we asked you who you believe. And so by a relatively healthy margin, you're siding with House budget writers who think the New Hampshire economy will remain relatively flat for the next 2 years. Be sure to vote on our next New Hampshire Watchdog poll. You can find it at newhampshirewatchdog.org. We'll bring you the results next week right here in the Cloakroom. I'm Grant Bosse. Thanks for watching.